Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams, and today I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment.
Welcome to another episode of the Power of Design podcast. In this episode, we talk to Austin Balzer from Storey Program Management. With over a decade of expertise in program and project management, Austin brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to this episode. He had worked in a diverse array of projects that span behavioral health facilities, freestanding emergency departments, acute care hospitals, ambulatory clinics, and strategic facility master plans. What sets Austin apart is not just his technical proficiency, but his genuine passion for people and team building. He is dedicated to fostering a culture of collaboration, accountability, and trust, ensuring that every project is a triumph for his clients and his team.
Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Sure. We're here enjoying some of my wife's wine.
It's fantastic.
Organic wine from Spain, so giving her some free advertising here.
Gotta love it.
How was your day today?
It was good. It was good. It's jam-packed. Getting proposals out the door, trying to shuffle staff to see which best teams we can allocate to each proposal. So it was a fun little day.
Nice. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
Absolutely. So I'm born and raised Richmond, Virginia. And I went to Virginia Tech, studied building construction. From there, I came down to Charlotte, worked for Robbins & Morton, actually for several years, doing work for then CHS.
They were general contractors?
General contractors, yep. And did a job for Caramont out in Mount Holly. I was a freestanding ED. And then my wife and I decided to make the move to Houston. She was a oil and gas banker, so Houston was the hub for that. And then we did that for about 2 years.
What did you do when you went up there?
I worked for Robbins & Morton doing a oil field hospital. I did that for a short little bit and then ended up actually moving to Houston while my wife and I planned a wedding. And ended up working for Whiting Turner out there, doing a lot of commercial mall work, parking decks, still on the general contracting side.
Yeah. So were you like a project manager?
So with Robbins & Morton, I started in the field engineer, worked my way up to project engineer, was a project engineer for Whiting Turner, got promoted to assistant PM while we were there. And then we decided Houston just wasn't for us. My wife had some family in Southern California, and I actually got linked up with a gentleman out there by the name of Ryan Hill, who worked for Whiting Turner on the West Coast, and decided to break off and start his own firm, kind of adopt the commercial contracting model into high-end custom homes. So we were building homes throughout Southern California in the Dana Point, Laguna Beach, San Diego markets.
Nice.
And it was an opportunity of a lifetime. Got to do a lot of really cool things that, you don't get to see often in our industry.
Yeah, that's cool to have the experience of commercial and residential because there is a huge difference. Early in my career, I was also fortunate enough to work for a firm that they were doing residential and commercial. Whole different world, just wood framing versus steel framing, very different. And each of them has their own good things and bad things.
Oh yeah. I think the good thing about it was, at least from translating the commercial process and management style over to residential, the magnitude of houses we were building were almost run like commercial outfits. I mean, we had superintendents, potentially field engineers and assistant superintendents. And then we also had an office staff of sometimes just a project manager, sometimes a project manager and a project engineer. So it was a cool translation. And, like at Storey PM now, some of our projects are multifamily. So we're introducing, the wood frame component to it, kind of more of that residential aspect to the project management group. And it's been nice to have that background in order to kind of facilitate it through to what we do now.
That's cool. So did you know all along that you wanted to go in the construction world?
Oh yeah. So I thought for a brief second I wanted to do sports broadcasting. Got to school.
Yeah, very similar.
Got to school, decided, that was not the route that I wanted to take. And I grew up in a family of developers, engineers, architects. So it was always kind of in our blood. And I immediately gravitated to building construction.
Nice.
I preferred the vertical piece, I think, more than the horizontal and the land piece.
Yeah.
That my dad and my uncles were extremely, involved with, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I love our industry. Even watching my dad and his brothers run their business, I think a big differentiating factor in our industry is it's such a people business.
Oh yeah.
And being in the program management standpoint now, we get to potentially have meetings with, the C-level leadership of hospital systems, or any other business. And then later that day, we're at a walkthrough, interacting with the field staff,
sure,
and the foreman and the superintendent. So, really getting to experience, all those different types of people is an extremely cool aspect, I think, of what we do as an industry.
Sure. Tell me about your transition before you join, the firm you're with today, so you can tell me about that.
Absolutely. So we were out in California, and my first child popped up on the radar. And so my wife and I instantaneously wanted to get back closer to family. Those red-eye flights home were not of something to celebrate in the least. And so we both grew up in Richmond, Virginia. We tried to make it work to go back to Richmond, but it just didn't have the banking industry that she needed. Mm-hmm. And, I and she really loved Charlotte when we left the first time. And, we didn't leave it because we didn't like it.
Yeah.
We left it to chase some opportunities. And so we immediately settled back on Charlotte. I actually got the opportunity to work remotely before we were working remotely as a world for about several months with that contractor out in Southern California. And then ironically, I got hooked up with Stantec and Josh Storey via recruiter.
Wow.
And I always said, if I was...
What year was that?
That was... so we moved back in late 2018. So I would say that was probably January of 2019.
Okay.
Spoke with them for several months. Tyler Campbell, who's now with us at Storey PM. Joel Palmer, Chris Powell. And really got to like those guys and, what they were all about, and their style and their approach. And
so at that point, have you done project management before?
Oh, yeah. So out in Southern California, that was project management was all I was really tasked with. So we built... I was in charge of building about a $25 million home out there in Dana Point. Very cool project. Had aquarium viewing panels in the basement, so you could be in the basement shooting pool or watching a movie.
That's crazy.
And simultaneously watch the people that were swimming in the pool outside. So, and then a couple other houses that were not nearly of that magnitude, but more so in like the $3 to $6 million range. And being out there and doing that high end of a custom home, as a general contractor, you're interfacing with the client so often. And I really gravitated to, that portion of the project management style.
Yep.
And as soon as I was made aware of a owner PM position opportunity, I immediately jumped on it. I actually had another opportunity to go work somewhere else. And I called Tyler Campbell up and I was like, hey, I'm about to accept this offer, but I'd really like to come work for you guys. So I kind of strong-armed him into hiring me, but it worked out.
Nice, man. Play hard to get.
So yeah, I mean, project management, I've been doing now for probably the last 8 years. So
that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the project management world, it's interesting because I don't think people go to school to be project managers. they come from all different adjacent professions around design, construction, real estate, zero experience in construction, architects, engineers. From the construction world, it seems that that is a natural progression because you're managing people, you're organizing a lot of things. But in the project manager world, there's a lot of delta between one project manager performance versus another one. There's a whole level of performance that you find in that world.
And I wouldn't just say to the level of performance, I'd say each of us kind of have a different style.
Yeah.
A lot of us are, extremely regimented, follow processes, develop action items, create, to-dos, keep the team in the guardrails. And not to say that we all don't do that. I mean, that's part of our job. But a lot of us, have a more people approach to project management. And in my opinion, we're interacting with folks day in and day out. It's a people business.
Sure.
The construction, in my opinion, just happens to be the after effect of it, and the cool product that we produce at the end of the day.
Right.
I would strongly, to your point of, the GC world kind of tailors pretty well to moving into the owner rep world. And I would absolutely agree with that. I think, my experience in the project management world as a GC only helped me to do what I do now better.
Oh, sure.
Managing subcontractors, procurement of material, coordinating with AHJs. I mean, we do all that now just at more of a prime level, I should say. So that, the transfer of those skills was extremely natural. And anybody that probably sits in on an OAC meeting that I might be leading will tell you I probably run the OAC like a general contractor would run the OAC. So
that's cool. And so you were at Stantec.
Was it Stantec?
And how was that transition to Storey PM today?
It was good. Stantec provided a lot of opportunities for us as a group to really grow our resumes in individual specific ways, but then, we were able to kind of understand what it meant to operate and have exposure on a national level.
Yeah.
I think of the world of Josh, and, when he told us that he was leaving, I was heartbroken. I was like, man, just when I find my spot.
Yeah.
And luckily, it worked out to where, some opportunities came up with Josh, and, I reached out and wanted to be a part of those, and it turned out great. So, but I mean, the Stantec days were invaluable. I mean, they kind of started me on my owner PM, road.
Yeah.
And we'll always be grateful for the opportunity that Stantec provided. Just, navigating maybe the little bit of nuances that are different than the GC world.
Yeah.
So, but Josh called not Josh called. I called Josh, and, I just had to be there. Like, he was the guy I wanted to work for.
Yeah.
The culture he was all about, the way he does business. I instantaneously gravitated towards Josh, and he's an excellent mentor and somebody, you want to get up and go to work for every day.
Sure. Yeah. I remember when he called me and we met, and he was still at Stantec, and he said, well, man, I just want to develop a new brand. I want to do this work. And I said, sure. And we went through our, I have a process called the brand DNA. So we went through all that with him and his wife, and, it was really cool because I knew him before. But going through that, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of like in-depth conversations about, not only business, but about life. When you think about how do you want your business to impact the world and all those things. And it was pretty interesting. It was really fun, learning, because I try to do is just to learn as much as I can. And then once I fully understand, help translate that to graphics, video, brand, website,
right.
Whatever medium is just translating that concept that is inside their, the customer brain. So that was really cool. And then, it snowballed pretty quick.
It did. I mean, we were very fortunate. So, we, I think there was only a couple of us at the time, but then Eli Lilly presented itself up in Concord. And I think if Josh was here sitting right next to me, he'd probably say, you know, that was a big win for us, and kind of allowed us to grow our team pretty substantially, fairly quickly. I think we had the opportunity to grow it even more, and we were very cognizant of, you know, hey, let's make sure we do this the right way,
right,
and not get too big too quick.
Sure.
So, but you know, that occurred, and you know, when we were at Stantec, I think our main mantra and our core focus was always primarily healthcare.
Yeah.
And I think when Storey Program Management came about, healthcare is always going to be our bread and butter and the areas that we pursue extremely heavily. But I think the ability to kind of diversify the portfolio a little bit was right there at our fingertips. And so, I mean, you know, we've grown now to 12 individuals, managing over $3.5 billion worth of work. You know, caveat that a lot of it is the Atrium Bed Tower stuff, and Eli Lilly. But we have a multifamily project ongoing right now in Uptown, Myers Park Church, for United Methodist right there. Finished up a project for the YMCA. We're in the midst of, broke ground recently on a Town of Matthews fire station. And then, you know, we had a unique industry connection that allowed us to build a couple of roller coasters.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we're in the process of, we finished one.
Yeah.
The other one is well underway, likely opening extremely soon.
Yeah.
And then the other's in the initial stages of construction.
So tell me about those projects. I mean, how similar or different are they to a typical, you know, building project?
I mean, you know, if you just break it down into a building of a project, you know, it's fairly straightforward. I think that the nuances of it that, you know, take it a little bit different is when you're dealing with entertainment venues and theme parks, you know, you have your design professionals, but then there's an added layer of that's like your theming and your that layer of design professionals who are deciding, you know, what cool graphics are going on the walkway up to the roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know, how are we ultimately going to theme, and what costumes are we going to assign to the staff, and just all those things that you kind of have to think about. That, you know, when you're building a hospital, everybody wears scrubs. Like,
Sure.
that's not something you necessarily have to worry about. But I would say, as far as just an overall execution of project, it was really cool to learn that those roller coaster systems really almost come turnkey. And sometimes, you know, a lot of it's, you know, the site work and foundations that you hire a GC to manage those aspects of the project. And then you have a full-blown turnkey roller coaster manufacturer who does.
Is that like a design build?
It's like a design build, basically.
Yeah.
The roller coaster actually almost acts as like an equipment piece, because really you construct this site. You've poured all your foundations, and then that roller coaster company will actually come in and set the structure down. Obviously, you're in charge of, you know, building out the landscaping, you know, all the sidewalks, enabling work and moving infrastructure, creating infrastructure, the queue house that you line up in to get on the ride, and then you know, the exit house, and then the maintenance buildings associated with it. So those are kind of your requirements from a general contracting standpoint, and then it's just making sure that you have the correct handoffs of that scope of work to the actual roller coaster manufacturer coming in and setting and installing the ride.
Wow. How do you permit that project?
I wish I could talk about that, because I'm not insanely involved in those.
Because I mean, I couldn't imagine like a building reviewer getting a 3D model or floor plans of a roller coaster. Like, what are you checking for here?
We had to bring Mark Nestle into the podcast on that discussion, because he's probably our roller coaster expert now.
Nice.
But yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I love to know, because there's gotta be some code governing that kind of facility, because there are people in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, life safety might be a big deal.
And I mean, you remember at Cedar Fair when they had the little structural column had a crack in it?
Yeah.
man, our phones were blowing up that day. Like, are y'all doing this project? Well,
Oh my
like,
gosh,
no, that's already been there. That's not ours. But
I know.
I always responded with, man, that structural engineer should get an absolute A plus. Like, there's videos of that
Yes.
coaster going
Yeah,
around.
who knows how long was that there?
Yeah. So, but yeah, very, very cool initiatives to be a part of. And I think from, the program management standpoint, just being able to drive a project around scope, schedule, and budget, and know the right people to onboard from a GC design standpoint, civil engineering standpoint, those right partners that you feel would totally knock the project out of the park. Like, once you have those expertise in the bag, like, then we push that team forward. And that's the cool part.
So what do you think makes a project successful?
So, I mean, obviously in our client's eyes, I think it's meeting scope, meeting the schedule, and meeting the budget. But there's definitely factors outside of that. You want a good culture within the project. You want to make sure, everybody, there's going to be times of ups and downs, and there's going to be times where you're pouring in tons of hours, and you got to create that culture that you can lock arms with that guy next to you and, power through a critical item that needs to get accomplished in order to not affect the schedule or the budget. And obviously safety being paramount, if you can get through an entire project without any incidents or extremely minor ones, that's always a win.
Yeah.
But, you really gauge from our standpoint, the success of the project is really gauged on the fact, and our success on the project is, would the client call you back to have you, do another one?
Yeah.
And I think we've been very fortunate, past life and, current one with Storey PM, we've had a lot of repeat clients. And I think that speaks volumes to our team and their abilities to execute a project in the manner of which that client, feels it needs to be executed.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but obviously hitting those big factors, scope, schedule, and budget. You always want to be the guy, hey, I got you in a month early, and oh, by the way, we didn't eat any of your contingency up.
Yeah.
So here's several dollars back. But making sure, it even gets down into the little things, making sure your contractors are paid on time, making sure your subs are engaged and paid on time. And, it's the environment, it's the culture. And I think when you create that, you've got people that know you're there, and, they're going to lean on you in hard times, and you're going to lean on them, and, together you make it through the finish line.
Yeah. So for me, that I'm on the design side,
Mm-hmm.
we usually, do most of our work up to construction documents, permitting. At some point, we get a permit, construction starts. We do CA, but that's the tail end of our involvement. What do you see typically in, designers, architecture firms? Do we tend to under document? Do we tend to over document? What do you think are the areas we could be better at?
Mm-hmm. At face value, I mean, it really just depends. I think from my approach, and I think a lot of what Storey Program Management is all about is, having the right partners in the room, like the GC, the major trade partners. We really want them involved in your design process.
Sure.
Because they can identify extremely quickly, maybe, a better way or a more efficient way to go about either constructing something in the field, designing it, setting a spec to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we really push for onboarding those right team members at the right time. And a lot of it's to help to facilitate from a design standpoint. If you got the guys that are ultimately going to adopt the drawings out into the field and go execute the project, why not have them involved on the front end to give a different perspective or maybe challenge the norm a little bit? But if they're also involved in the development of the drawings, the likelihood of, the misses or the RFIs or the drawing coordination aspect of it, that can help tighten that margin of error just a little bit, which is, could be, at the end of the day, dollars or time on the schedule.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think, I'll be extremely transparent with you.
Sure.
Things that I've seen that are just, that you catch on designs plans is sometimes copy and paste from other, details or something like that.
We don't do that here.
But yeah, you guys are insanely talented in ways that I could never be. Like I can't dream up or put down on paper, a 70,000 square foot MOB. If you gave me the plans, I could probably go build it for you. But my brain's just not wired like y'all's are. And I think that's the important factor is like, it takes all different types of acumen, expertise, et cetera. But if you combine the right ingredients of those, a lot of our work is done up on the front end, planning, doing it right. So that by the time you hit construction, you're not in cruise control, but you have a well thought out plan.
That's right.
Everybody is extremely downloaded on those documents, knows exactly what they're producing, knows exactly what they're prefabbing.
Yeah.
The list can go on. And it translates into most of the time and hopefully a much smoother process.
Sure.
And you tend to make up, the Navy SEALs have an amazing saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Well, if you can move slow at the beginning, diligently and intentionally, by the time you've set a cadence and you've done the planning up front, slow becomes smooth. Well, smooth then translates to fast when you actually get into the field. So.
Yeah, and even as a just process, is still you're building the process, so you're building that foundation.
Yep.
Then you're building the structure, skin, finishes. It's the same thing. Even when we are designing, and sometimes if I'm working with junior designers, they're trying to do the finishes before the foundation. I'm like, I know we're gonna have that, but we need a foundation for this. We need to understand where things are coming from. We need to have approvals, and then we're gonna do a structure. But don't rush to do that.
Yeah,
like it's the right idea.
What are your finishes gonna sit on?
Yes, run sequence.
Yes,
and I have always been very impressed, because I come from Colombia, and when I was down there, because I've lived half of my life down there, half of my life here, and you always see from outside, United States, the biggest, nicest country in the world, technology, all these things, amazing stuff. And now that I'm in here, that's all possible through basic project management. That's it. It's project management. How did they go to the moon in the 70s? Project management.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody had an idea. They sat down, they made a plan, they worked on it, and they made it happen.
How did they develop the iPhone? Project management.
Yes, everything. Even those high rises in New York years ago, this, the subway system without technology.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how did you do that? Just basic people meeting and saying, let's do it this way, and putting a plan together and doing it. That's amazing what you can do.
Oh, yeah. Collaboration is key.
Yeah, collaboration. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is communication. Because at the end of the day, it's just communication.
Oh, yeah.
So many people involved, so many personalities, so many different perspectives, and you guys are in the middle of it.
Oh, yes.
So tell me about how important is communication, and what's kind of your communication style, and how do you guys translate? Because I know for a fact, how hard it is that sometimes we have an idea, but the way we communicate it is not really the way we wanted to communicate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Communication is a major rock in getting a project done. Plain and simple. And so, I often kick off project meetings with, hey, I'm Austin Balzer. I'm here representing the client to execute the project from the project management style, happy to have you guys on board. And, the one thing that I ask from you is like, I'm not the expert in medical equipment planning. I'm not the expert in electrical engineering. But what I need from you all is communication when you have a problem, foresee a problem, when you have a roadblock that you or the team can't, work together to remove, and we need an answer from the client, to alleviate that constraint on the project. That's what I need from you guys.
Sure.
And, I think this is probably a way deeper conversation. I think, within our education system, it's you work by yourself. There's only one answer.
That's right.
And if you get it wrong, it's bad.
And you test on your own.
Yeah. And you test on your own.
Yeah.
And, for the majority of, I'll call it real life.
Yes.
Post-school world that we live in, everything's done majority of the time as a group.
Yes.
And I think, what we've learned in our school system creates a hesitancy to bring up an issue or to be wrong.
Yes, because it makes you look like you don't know.
Exactly.
Which there is nothing wrong with that.
There's absolutely, this is construction. Things come up.
Yeah.
But the only way we're going to solve them is if we all know about it.
Yeah.
I think we just, it's the ability to lean on the team to, and to be able to sniff out when, you can sense something might be not going according to plan. And start driving that conversation and make people feel comfortable enough to raise their hand and say, yep, I think we've got a little issue here. But, and then you take that communication factor just on the project level. Well, you've also got owners, the majority of the time, their specialty is not building. Yeah. That's why we're there, is to help them execute a capital project or a building, because, they're in the background running their own business.
Yeah.
And it's being able to take those complicated communication talking points and relay that to them so that they understand.
Yes.
And, get them up to speed. I don't want to say in an elementary fashion, but a very, fluid and seamless fashion of communicating that to them so that they have the right information to then make the decision they feel appropriate for their organization, their current project, et cetera. So, communication falls all over the board. Down into the trade partners.
Sure.
Doing weekly work plans and pool planning, that next milestone, within all the foremen associated with a certain section of the building. Having those communicative touch points is key. Yeah. There's just no other way around it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine doing a project where we didn't talk to each other?
Oh, man.
And actually, that's one of the things that I thought was great about COVID.
Yes.
Is that we weren't with each other. So we had to communicate more. Even more.
That's right.
And we did an initiative for Atrium Health for several family medicine and OBGYN clinics right at the onset of COVID. And we had to move a number of physicians into 16 different locations over 6 months.
Wow.
And several of the locations had multiple suites, and, some required permitted sets of drawings, while others were, aesthetic upgrades just to kind of clean things up. Obviously new medical equipment was needed, but, the communication and the cadence at which we met on that project while not being able to be together was, I think, paramount in helping us basically achieve the goal.
Sure.
We got all those physicians moved in and, did it on time and a little bit under budget. So that was a cool experience in my part. But that one really hit home for me as far as the communication aspect. For some reason, that team that we had, everybody took off their egos set aside, and man, they were just whatever needed to be said, it got said, we solved it, and we were able to move on. And it was one of the coolest experiences I'd ever been a part of.
That's amazing when that happens, because it doesn't happen all the time.
No.
It's hard to find. It's hard to find people that are good with their soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
I think technical skills, we all learn and you go to school to that. But I think the soft skills are more related because nobody explain or nobody's teaching you that when you're growing up.
No.
They're more about, kind of your family or your context,
Mm-hmm.
what you learn by experience, and then the way you're
Oh,
built,
yeah. Absolutely.
how you wire. And sometimes people are more sensitive to, how is this person receiving information? What is the best way to communicate this? And it's even as difficult as speaking another language. This is the same message, but I need to deliver this message in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
Because I understand that they receive this message in a very different way.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I love that from our industry, because I like learning about how do I communicate so I can understand when it's working and when it's not working, and then how, the specific person or client or, engineer I'm collaborating with, how do they receive the information. And the other thing is the medium, because now it's, a lot of people are sending text messages, emails, phone calls, and then you get all these, the same thing in a text message, email, phone call, completely different message.
Oh, yeah. The tone of it.
Yes.
I mean, just being able to look at somebody, understand their, how their eyes react to it, how their body language reacts to something. Like, you don't get that behind an email or a text.
Yes.
I mean, there's some things that, I'm sure you've experienced. So you send across a text or an email and you're like, you may send somebody, one way or that. And it's like, that was not my intent. You know, let me just pick up the phone and call you.
Yes. Many times I'm responding to an email and it's getting too long. I'm like, no, let me just call. When it's like 3 or 4 lines, no, that shouldn't be an email. I need to call this person. Or when I'm not business world, I'm not a text person.
Yeah.
I like, in my mind, text is for personal. And then when clients or engineers start texting, it's uncomfortable to me.
Right.
Because I feel like there is just so much misinterpretation in a text.
And maybe you don't feel like you have that true relationship with them. We touched on the school thing. Like you said, they're not teaching soft skills anymore. I was very blessed to have a dad who ran his own business. But he was extremely intentional on bringing us, my brother and my sister and I, to any meeting he could, any job walk. Like, he exposed us to the communication part of the business.
Yes.
And I liken it all the way back to when we would travel as kids and we would jump in a taxi. And my dad would know, like, by the end of that taxi ride, my dad had that man or woman's life story.
That's amazing.
And as a kid, I always used to get so embarrassed. I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
I know.
What's going on? And only to find out later in life, like, he made the comment to me one time, one, I love people. So I'm always interested in learning more about people.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, that's good. And then he said, I'm training myself to be able to have a conversation with just about anybody that I come across.
Wow.
And I was like,
that's
okay,
an amazing skill.
And now I do it. And I'm sure my kids will look at me and be like, what are you doing? This is so embarrassing. But truly, and I mean, to the business development side, I mean, potentially, you could be sitting at the bar next to somebody, and that's a business opportunity. And unless you take the opportunity to just introduce yourself, have some small talk, and potentially create a much bigger relationship, you would have never known about it.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Every conversation, in my opinion, you don't have might be a missed opportunity. And like I said at the beginning, like, I love people and learning about people and doing.
And that's the most real, I think, authentic and effective sales technique. Because you're not pushing anything.
No.
You're not asking people to buy what you want. You're interested for real on their story. And when somebody hear you and pay attention to you, you feel great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because we all like to talk about ourselves. We all want attention, especially now with technology and social media, that we're all distracted all the time. To give someone attention, that's huge.
Oh yeah.
And that people appreciate it.
Time is valuable.
That's right.
It's the only thing you can't give back.
Yes.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
But back to the communication standpoint, so like internally, we do strength finders.
Oh, nice.
So, and we like to, I mean, depending on the project size, obviously, we like to implement those on projects.
So you try to do in every project?
Try to. If the size of the project, the schedule warrants it. Obviously, on those small, slow burn or quick burn projects, it's hard to set that up.
Yeah.
But even in our internal team, like Tyler Campbell and I get along phenomenally, but we both have completely different styles. He's extremely analytical, whereas I'm more, relationship driven and strategic thinking. And, I'll come to him and I'll have a question, and all of a sudden he'll just start firing off questions to me left and right. And it's not to make me feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
I just know because of his strengths, like he's literally just trying to hone in on the issue.
Yeah.
Whereas some people, if you didn't know that, you would be like, whoa.
Yeah. They will
you're
take
just
it
coming
personally.
at me like
Right.
this. So, we try to have that within Storey PM. And so when we have conflict amongst each other, the way I present a problem to Tyler may be a different way to present it to Greg. Yeah. And so, knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses and how we tick and is extremely informative just from running an internal business. And then if you're able to translate it to a project team, you're mining for that conflict. You're trying to find those constraints. You're trying to find those issues and how to optimize and create efficiencies within a project. And I think knowing the people that are doing it and how to place them and allow them to collaborate to the best of their strengths really helps drive a project.
Yeah, that's interesting because, we all are certain way, and we expect others to be the same, to receive information the same way, to communicate the same way. And, it applies to everything, to marriage, parenting, work life, because you're, with these people 8 hours a day, every day. So they showed up pretty fast, and they it shows up as conflict. But getting just that information, that's half of the battle right there. When know, okay, I'm not crazy. They're not crazy. It's not about them. It's not about me. It's just we're speaking basically different languages.
Oh, yeah.
And I just need to learn a little bit of their language I can tell them this,
You gotta cater to everybody's personality. You gotta be able to understand it in order to really drive a message and communicate thoroughly. So yeah, communication is key. Yeah. I can't say it more. I can't say it anymore. I mean, I'd rather somebody over communicate to you. I'd rather you bug me with communication.
Over communication is
I'll send you a note or something. I got it. I'm good. Like you can stop copying me on that or, whatever it may be. But I'd rather you tell me more than I need to know.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is just the basic difference between men and women, because women tend to communicate a lot more than men.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes when we think we're communicating, we're not even close.
No. You said what now?
Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot, and because I consider myself an introvert, so even more than that, I spend a lot of time in my own head, and I probably communicate 10% of everything that's going on in there. But I realize of that, so I'm always trying to push myself. Right. And I realize, like, I catch myself, like, okay, I should express this. Let's do it. Push it there, put it to the other side, because I know others appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
because they know what they're working with.
Oh yeah, and I think we had conversations earlier, like this podcast. If the way you started out on this podcast to where you have it now. You told me we're two different ways of communicating through it.
Yeah, completely different person.
Yep, pushing those boundaries internally.
Yes, yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah,
I feel really good. I think the biggest thing is the confidence. I feel very confident.
Yeah,
before, I think I told you when we spoke the last time, I was very prepared and scripted, and I had this question. So when you were talking, I will be looking at the next question to make sure that I follow up. So I'm not listening to what you're saying. So, after 88 episodes, now I'm like just relaxing, just listening to what you're saying and asking a real question. And I'll worry about the next one later.
I mean, everybody fights their own internal battles with that. I consider myself to be a people person. I love having conversations with people. And for some reason, for the longest time, you stick me in front of a presentation or in front of a room to speak, and it was like, I was scared to do it. I just didn't like it for some reason. And I think you mentioned, continuously going through the podcast and pushing your own personal boundaries, me just getting up there and doing a presentation. Like, you just got to force yourself to get up there and do it. And eventually you become way more comfortable with it. And it allows you to, back to the communication thing, communicate your points more clear.
Yeah.
If you're, more comfortable in your own setting, more confident in your setting. So yeah, pushing those internal boundaries to make yourself better. The relentless desire to get better.
That's right.
Yeah.
Austin, tell me about, let's say, the next 5-10 years of your life. What will you say is the best version of that life for you?
Oh, that would have to start in no matter what.
Some more wine?
Yes, absolutely. I think that would need to start at home. Okay. Healthy family, growing family, a family unit, 5 to 10 years. If I could picture us, all still together playing, I had a really unique upbringing to where, like, my family was insanely close, and my brother, my sister, and I loved hanging out with my parents just as much as we loved going out and hanging out with our friends.
Nice.
And so if I could have that type of life for my boys, and they just want to be around my wife and I all the time, that would be a big W in my book. And then professional, I'd love, we've got some pretty good goals for Storey Program Management. We want to keep growing and push the envelope there. And I think if we can meet those goals, another, huge milestone and a big check, and, but doing it the right way, doing it with integrity, rising tide lifts all ships.
Yep.
And so, going and giving back. I've really not come around to it, but just made it more intentional recently to give back. Like you mentioned, how can we give back to these kids that are only learning technical skills, not the soft skills? Like, how do we bring them into an environment where they understand the interpersonal and emotional IQ of a business outside of just the X's and O's of the business?
Sure.
So giving back to the community is definitely something at the forefront that I would like to probably take more into and implement more in my life over the next 5 or 10 years.
Cool.
But family unit, number one.
Yeah.
And then, hopefully meeting our goals as a business. I'd be set and happy, and it's that's how I would ultimately envision it.
Yeah, that's awesome. About 3 months ago, I spent some time with couple of friends, and we were talking about similar topics, and I started thinking about what's the ideal for me, and I thought first also family, because having a family, being able to have a family, a wife and kids, right there, just that you won the lottery, because many people they don't have the chance to do that. They go through their life and they don't get to experience it. So just having it is huge.
Oh yeah.
And then being able to play that role, because I see my life as I play these roles. I play this role as husband, as father, as business owner, as a client, as product, service provider. I play all these roles, but the main role that I play, just because I'm there all the time, is as head of my house and a husband and father of my kids, and and the more I think about it, like, man, this is such a privilege to play this role.
Oh, yeah.
It's and I like it. I'm very excited. My youngest son, he's 7 years old, and I think I told you about this. He's, second grade, and he's learning all these new things, and he comes from school and he tells me, oh, I'm learning about the brain and the eyes. Did you know the eyes are connected to the brain, and when you feel hot and cold? And I'm like, yeah, what? No way. And he's telling me all these things, and I feel like, man, that's amazing. Like, you're discovering the world for the first time, and he's so excited to see how things work, and he's talking about photosynthesis and all these things, like, and he feels that big boy because he's learning all these things. I'm like, man, this is so amazing.
I think that's the best part about being a parent.
Yeah.
Is you almost get to do it all over again, but you got to live vicariously through your kids. And I know, like, you get caught in the rat race sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you're just like going through the motions. And you got to be able to take that moment to sit back and be like, man, I got 2 healthy boys. I got a beautiful wife. We live an amazing life. I love what I do for a living. And like, I'm so blessed.
Oh, yeah. You're
like,
a millionaire.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Like, I am so blessed in where I can, sometimes you lose sight of that, like getting caught up in the race, and you got to have those, you need a partner that'll reset you on those things. You need kids that'll reset you on those things. And, but yeah, it's a true blessing to, 1, have a family, and then 2, I think, be in the positions that we're in is unreal. Like, cannot thank God enough for that.
Yeah. And seeing them, it's interesting. My oldest son is 15. So, I'm at the point where, you let them like make mistakes, and you want to save them for everything, but it's impossible, and they need to live their life. Like, they need to go through things. But not too long ago, now he has a girlfriend now. And I was so excited for him, first time they went to the movies, and, when he went there, and as she comes to our house and they watch a movie, and then she leaves, and I'm inside, I'm like so excited because I'm like, know what you're thinking, like you're close to her. I'm like, 2 hours of a movie. What do? Do I get close? Do I not get close? Do I hold her hand or not? Like, you don't watch the movie.
I can't even imagine when I get to that point in life.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. I'm so excited and happy for him.
That's good. I bet, I think my 2 boys are 5 and 3, just had their birthdays in March. And they're really getting to the point like where they're becoming buddies.
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
They're becoming friends. And my brother and I shared a room growing up, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, Brooks, the younger one, he's out of the crib now. He's sleeping in a big boy bed.
Yeah.
I think we need to move them into the same room. And it's been awesome. Like, cause they really are becoming so close. And yeah, do they fight like brothers? Absolutely. But do they play like brothers, and they become each other's best buddies? Oh yeah. And that's just cool to sit back and watch them communicate to each other.
Yes.
And, my oldest one is always, very cautious and always looking like, bro, no, Brooks, don't do that.
Brother,
yeah. And then my youngest is just a bruiser.
Oh, yeah.
And just, wants to run through a wall, and the other one's like, no, we can't do that. So, learning their different personalities and kind of how they tick, and just watching them grow is a unique privilege.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 3 brothers,
okay.
And we're only 2 years apart.
Okay.
So, when we grew up, it was like growing up with friends because very similar ages.
Oh, yeah.
13,
and you hang out with each other's
12,
friends.
14, it was all very similar. So, and our house, it was the hub because all our friends would come here because we were 3 people. So it was really nice, man. We had a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. It's my brother and I are still extremely close to this day, I think, because of the relationship we had when we were younger, which is insanely cool. He's a project manager too.
Oh, nice.
So he lives down in Florida. So, we both carried on kind of the family legacy of staying in the design and construction world. But, and then my sister, she's way smarter than both of us. She's off working for KPMG as a consultant, doing all that fun stuff. So, but yeah, I think one thing as a parent that's tough is you always want to give your kids what you had or more.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. You don't realize how absolutely, sometimes difficult that is.
Yes.
And, But then again, you take those moments to step back and you're like, man, like, this is great. Like, why was I complaining earlier?
Yes. And it's a motivation. I feel that having kids for me has been a great motivator. And I can see now, I understand my parents. I understand why they did what they did and how hard they worked. Because my parents grew up in like the countryside of Colombia.
Okay.
So my dad grew up in a like coffee plantation farm, and my mom grew up in area that it was more agriculture, but it was little towns. And they were the ones from their generation that moved to the cities.
Okay.
So everybody's was just doing agricultural work in farms, and they left and went to a city. Nobody had done that before, and they started a family in the city and learning how to work there. We grew up there, and now we moved to another country, and now we're going somewhere else. And now I'm thinking about my kids. I'm like, okay, well, where are we gonna position them in the future? And I help them understand where we're coming from and all the work that has been done before them, and so they can understand, at least all the work that had happened. Because when I see them today, like right now, we're buying a car for my son, and I'm like, cannot believe we're buying this kind of car for a 15-year-old. Like, this is insane. It doesn't make sense. But that's what we have. And like, it needs to happen. And who knows what he's going to do for his kids.
Right? It is. I mean, I really like the motivation piece. It's generational motivation. And, there's a great saying out there that's, weak times create strong men, strong men create good times create weak men, so on and so forth. And it's like, how do you instill those values and that work ethic to keep that motivation from generation to generation going?
Yes.
Because sometimes it can get taken advantage of. And you always want to have that hunger to get better, to do something different, move from the countryside to the city, be the first in your family to go to school. There's the litany of things you can talk about. And I think, pushing those boundaries as a family unit is kind of cool.
Right. And you see your role in the generational trajectory, and you're like, okay, I did my part.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fun. Like you felt the drive to do it.
Yep.
And you feel fulfilled because you're playing the role.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think about this all the time. I'm like, what are my boys gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, and my wife's like, oh, you're so hard on them. And I'm like, well, like, life's kind of hard. Like, it's not always gonna be easy. Like, you gotta have some things that are a little difficult.
Oh yeah.
So it's there's no playbook for this parenting thing.
No. And, parenting is amazing because first, I think, like everything, nobody showed you or taught you how to be a parent. So you're just winging it.
Yep.
And most of the time, now that I've been a parent for some years, most of the time is your own issues, weaknesses, insecurities, and doubts. And you're just overshadowing and inputting that in these poor kids that are just a vessel, empty vessel. And you're putting all this thing in there. And sometimes I'm like, and I try to do this as much as I can, is to apologize to my kids, because many times I'm like, why did I say that? Man, that doesn't make sense. And I go back and like, man, I'm so sorry. I should have said that. Or this is why I did this. That's not right. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. It's like almost parenting your faults out of your kids, because like you said, they're sponges. They pick up what you're doing. Yeah. And then you're like, wow, that's my responsibility. Like, I got to work on that in order to be a better parent, so that I'm not parenting that out of them.
Yes.
Which is, that's a unique little aspect of it as well. But yeah, they're, but I'm insanely blessed with my two boys. Like, they're so good, extremely well-mannered. They're the best.
Nice. What advice would you give a person, let's say a younger professional, that they might feel lost, or they don't know what to do with their careers, they want to advance? What do you think is a good advice for a person to just take advantage of, all the opportunities that we have that they may feel insecure?
Ooh, that's a good question. You can go to the old cliche of like chase your passion. And I truly believe that. Like, find something you like to do, because you're going to have to wake up and do it every day.
Yeah.
So really enjoy what you want to do. And I think, that took me a little while. Not to say I didn't like general contracting, but I think that specific part of the business, for whatever, reasons within myself internally, just wasn't the long-term play for me. But I loved the building industry. And so it's if you love a general topic, maybe you find a subcategory within that you're insanely passionate about. And I would also say, don't worry about money. You're back to the kid thing. Oh, we don't have enough money to have kids yet. You're never going to have enough money. Like,
yes.
Just do it. I think Pat Faulkner, Senior, who, that was project management resources. And then they were acquired by Stantec, and Josh worked for Pat and, followed him to Stantec, and, so on and so forth. He had a great saying that, just start. Just start,
yes.
And then you will figure it out.
Get
and
the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think to take the initiative.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are scared to take the initiative, and it's, just start something and see where it goes. And, whether you're in a job and, you have an outside passion, okay, well, start your outside passion, and see if you can grow it into something where you don't have to do just the requirement of a job. Like, you get to translate that into what you do for a living. But do something that makes you happy, because, the money, success, like, none of that matters. Like, it's your happiness at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And whether or not, you go home and you're satisfied with the day. It may have been a tough day, but you satisfied with it, and you get up and you wake up the next morning and you're excited to go conquer, whatever that day has laid out for you. So, I think it's, and try, I think maybe this is a generational gap. My dad was like a company man. Like, when you start with somebody, like, you should work with them forever. And I respect that a ton, and not saying you shouldn't do that, but if something's not working for you, you got to try something different.
Sure.
And I'm a prime example of that. I worked for Robbins and Morton. I worked for Whiting Turner. I worked for Hill Construction. And, then I found my kind of what I believe is my niche in the project management owner representative world. And I've gravitated to it. And I loved it. It took me a long time to get there. So I think that's another piece of advice. Like, don't give up. Like, you'll find it. Was it Oprah Winfrey didn't really make it big till she was like 40s or something like that. So there's always time to do, what you love
and take action. I think that's one of the big ones, because I think a lot about that, because being an introvert, I'm a planner. So I love planning, but taking action, I'm like, wait, I need more plans. And, my wife is the opposite. She's an action taker. She's action. And I've learned a lot, and we complement very well, because I realized, just take the action. If it was not the right action, you learn that was not the right one. Just take a different one. But being action bias is huge. Understand, if you feel uncomfortable, or you feel that you're in a job that you don't feel good anymore, just take an action, move somewhere else, and then move somewhere else, because just get the ball rolling. That's where progress shows up.
You got to fail to grow.
Yeah.
You got to mess up.
Yeah.
And I remember this day vividly. I got hired by Robbins and Morton. I was riding around in a truck with Superintendent Mike Gooden. And he said, if there's one piece of advice I can give you, just make a decision. He was like, even if it's the wrong one.
Yes.
He was like, just make a decision. He was like, because you don't stop the whole circus. You keep the circus going. And if it happened to be the wrong one, we can go back and fix it. Yeah. But if you don't make that decision, everybody's stuck in place. Yeah. And so that's stayed with me, obviously, to this day. And it holds so true. And it links back to what Pat said, just start. Like, you gotta go somewhere. So, download your options, internally figure out which one's the best one, and make that decision and move forward. And if you get a little ways down the road and you realize it might not have been the best one, you change course.
That's right.
So,
Cool. My last question for you.
yes.
Do you have any questions for me?
Do I have any questions for you? So I'll take the one that you gave me from a design perspective.
Yes.
How do you feel that we can make the design process better? Like what you asked, what are we doing too much of? What are we not doing enough of? Like, where do you feel the design industry needs to go with AI and, all of the technology that's coming around, and how, there's softwares out there that potentially, clinicians can, hey, I've got 4 providers that are in this, that I need a clinical space for. They need, they need a lab, they need an x-ray, and they need, X amount of exam rooms. Like, provide me the most optimal floor plan layout.
Yeah.
How do we take design to the next level? Like, what are the design things we need to work on or be
So
unaware
I think
of?
there are two things. One is respect.
Mhm.
So respecting the profession, because there's so many people that sometimes they're questioning things, or they don't understand the process, and they're going too much in our process where they don't understand it
Mhm.
good enough, that now we need to start justifying and explaining things that you're paying us for a reason, and
Right.
we understand this. So that's one of the things. The other one is challenging. So how do you challenge, and when do you challenge? Because like everything, we tend to just, let's repeat the same solution, let's try to be efficient,
Mhm.
let's do this thing. But challenging in a way. Now you need to understand that you need a designer that it's comfortable being challenged.
Right.
Which, I think sometimes designers in general, there is this ego about my design, and don't touch it, and I know what I'm doing. However, when you're challenged with the right idea, the right mindset, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because many times I've been challenged when, like, you're right, I should have looked at this problem a different way.
Right.
And I look at my problem the same way I've been looking at it before. And thank you for that. Let me try to do that again.
Right.
And just the basic idea, for examples, in our industry is options, right? So we want to be efficient and do just one design, and hopefully you like it, and let's keep going. But there are many times where the task should have options. And could be 1, 2, 3, 4, multiple options. I don't know.
Right.
And because of our industry, sometimes depending on I will say the firm size. So larger firms tend to be less flexible, and they're all about billing rates and all these things. So they're project managers, they're push against more work, versus we as a small firm, we tend to be very flexible.
Right.
Because I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And to show options, you don't need to spend 50 hours.
Right.
You can show just ideas, just on paper.
Yeah.
Just to sketch it out.
Quick sketch.
Say, your problem, I can solve it 1, 2, 3, 4 on paper. And let's go through that. And that's something I try to push here is, let's don't go too far too fast.
Yeah.
Because if we get input early on, we start informing that solution, not only with our perspective, but with others' perspective. So yeah, I think respecting and challenging, but then it goes back to the communication and who you're working with.
Right.
How big is the firm? Who's the person? What's their personality? So yeah,
Very nice.
those things.
Heck yeah. One last question.
Yes.
Favorite part about the United States?
Like place?
Yes. In general, it could be, the culture, the people, what gravitated you here, obviously.
Yeah.
And then what kept you here?
So I think in general, just because of the way I am, I think the order and the structure.
Okay.
So even just thinking about roads and interstates, when I'm going somewhere 10 hours, New York, Florida, I'm like, this was thought years ago, even before we had this many cars, and it still works.
Oh, yeah.
So like thinking about the future 50 years later, and I'm planning for that today, that to me is beautiful. I'm like, oh my God, yes, of course. I'm preparing for that.
Yep.
I think in general, that's what I love about the system.
Right.
The system works.
Right.
And I think the difference between a developed country and undeveloped country is just the systems are clunky, but here the system works. Some people may like it or don't like it, sure, but it works. You know, taxes system or DMV or whatever. But there is a system.
There's a system
and the
in
system
place.
is there. And it has some little tiny flaws, but it works.
Right.
And it's scalable.
Right.
So I think the organization and structure is what I love the most.
Nice.
Yeah. Now,
makes sense from a project manager.
but there are some other things because now that I've lived half of my life in Colombia, half of my life here, so I come here, then I go back. Now, when I go back as a different person, and I can start comparing lifestyles.
Okay.
When I go down there, I feel more humanity in people.
Mm-hmm.
I see more like physical, let's say, chaos and disorganization.
Mm-hmm.
But the human aspect, I feel people are, nor are because I don't really know how they feel, but people smile more.
I would strongly
People
agree with that.
are together more.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have all the things that we have here, but they have fun.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
There is not having enough money is not a reason not to share with others and enjoy life.
Right.
So I always see like the trade-offs and the price I'm paying for this, for what I have here and what I gave up. And then down there, they want what we have, but we want what they have.
Yeah.
It's always 50-50.
Grass is always greener.
Yes.
No, I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
I mean, when younger, just doing either a mission trip or just going to a less developed country, the joy on majority of people's faces was extremely noticeable.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes you sit back and think, wow, you have a lot less than maybe others throughout the world, but you are equally as smiling every day.
Yes.
And that's a cool thing to see.
Yes. There are things that I remember culturally. If I want to go to see my friend or somebody, I can go show up. I don't need to call.
Right.
I'm up at the door. And yeah, come on, let's go eat. Here, you need to make an appointment weeks in advance.
No.
You need to set it when you start, like birthday parties here for kids. They give you when they start and when it finishes. Down there, finishes? What? No, it's at this time, and you can be there 2 hours later. The party's still going on. There is no end time.
Mm-hmm.
Here, they put an end time.
Oh, yeah.
And now I do it. Like I do it for my kids also. But down there is no end time. It's just be here. And you want to bring friends? Oh yeah, bring all your friends. Here's no, it's just you. The list is very specific.
I find myself sometimes being like, I told you, like, open door policy. Like, you don't have to call me. Just come on.
Yeah.
It's wild how people don't actually take that literally. Like,
I know.
No, it's an open door policy.
Yeah,
if
they
you want to
think
come
it's
over,
just,
come on.
just nice to say, but no, it's not for real.
No, absolutely not. Now, hopefully we can change that.
Yeah.
That'd be
possible.
fun. Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Austin, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your time.
Greatly appreciate it.
I'm very excited for what you guys are gonna do. I really enjoy getting to know you more. I like Josh a lot. I think you guys are doing amazing work here in Charlotte.
Thank you.
There's just getting started, and I hope to be a witness of what you guys are doing, and hopefully I can help you guys make it happen.
And I would repeat the exact same about you and the group you've got here at OSA Studio. It's been phenomenal getting to know you, and thank you for all the brand work for SPM. It's still, I'm putting these proposals together. It's right at the forefront of everything we've got going on. So cheers to us and the hopeful success that we endure in the future.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.